We're going to talk about advanced ICE technologies, internal combustion engine technologies. And the reason we're talking about this is very simple. There's a lot of different categories that you're already talking about every day. There's a lot of different categories you're already selling every day, but they're evolving and they are becoming more of a standard or kind of a general way things are coming out as even more things are advancing. So, long gone, I believe we can all agree, are the days of, the customer coming in for a cap and rotor button and some spark plug wires. Maybe you'll sell a spark plug wire kit every now and then. Maybe you'll sell a cap every now and then. But the reality is those days are pretty much gone. And so too are some of the days of the regular things that we're commonly thinking about selling, like just fuel injectors or just an ignition coil, things like that. Those categories are evolving as well. So that's why we want to cover this. We want to give you some insights into some categories that, again, you're already selling, you're already talking about, but to let you know what your capabilities are and how easily you can service these shops out here and your customers with all these technologies because of the availability you have and the programs that we have. So if we go back to 2005 and we just look at the top selling vehicle that's been out for, oh my goodness, forever, whether it's fleet or just, personal owners picking them up, that F-150 is one of the most popular platforms, vehicles ever built. But if we go back to '05, you see we only had three options on the motor. We had a 4.2 liter, a 4.6 liter, and a 5.4 liter. What I want you to pay close attention to here, though, is on both of the V6, I'm sorry, on the V6 and the smaller V8, these were single overhead cam engines. They had multi-port fuel injection, that's your MFI there. And it wasn't until the 5.4 liter that we had not only multi-port fuel injection, but also VVT. And thank God for the VVT system of that 5.4 liter V8 because it has made everyone rich that works on Fords. I mean that VVT system was very new. It was it was almost experimental in some ways, trying to figure out how to get that right. But that really set off a chain of events with VVT with that 5.4 liter and pretty much merged into just about every vehicle at this point today. So that's 2005. You had just a few options. Well, if we just fast forward to 2020, we're in 2025 and there's even different options now. But if we look at 2020 F-150 options, we had six different options, even a 3-liter Power Stroke diesel, right? But what I want you to pay close attention to here is not necessarily the engine block, the RPMs, but I want you to notice all the way across the board, they all have VVT, variable valve timing. But all the way across the board, not all of them have a turbo. Some have two, some have one, some have zero. And then all the way across the board, they either all have GDI or GDI and multi-port fuel injection at the same time, minus that one 3-liter Power Stroke with the common rail diesel. And so the point we're making here is these advanced ICE technologies, regardless of the manufacturer or the size of the engine, they are working to basically add these different technologies into pretty much every platform out there for a multitude of reasons. And this is just one example of a 15-year difference between 3 motors availability to 6 motors availability and the technologies that are within them. And the reason for this is very simple, right? It really kind of goes down to, I know we've all seen it in the shop, the sign that says, we can do good, cheap, and fast, but we can only do two. You can only pick two of those things. Well, it's very similar with these ICE technologies. What the cafe standards and the manufacturers are being held to is they're being asked, hey, look, you need to improve fuel economy, but at the same time, you need to reduce emissions. But at the same time, you need to improve the performance of the smaller engines so that the customers don't have a difference in drive, the way that the vehicle drives. So in the case of, good, fast, and cheap, where you can only pick two, well, we need fuel economy, reduced emissions, and performance. And we can't just pick two. We have to do all three. So the manufacturers have to do all three. And in order to make it happen, they are looking into all these different categories here that are being used in some type of unison here to get those three things done. And the categories they're focused on heavily to basically cover all of these needs, the economy, the emissions, and the performance. They're using turbochargers. They're using vapor canister purge pumps, variable valve timing, GDI and multi-port fuel injection systems, cylinder deactivation solenoids, electric vacuum pumps, active grill shutters, and even electrical AC compressors. There's a lot of different technologies that are now being dropped into vehicles to make sure they can hit these three measurements that they're looking for. So we'll start with turbocharging. And really, we've seen this and we've talked about it a lot here in the last month. I believe if we go back to the very early, I think it's 2010 or so, only about 10% of vehicles coming off the assembly line new had a turbo. Some had two, but mostly a turbo. So about 10% of vehicles. You fast forward to today, a little, basically 50%, right at or a little over 50% of all vehicles coming off the assembly line new today have at least one turbo. And it's very simple why they're doing this. On these smaller displacement engines, especially the four cylinders, but even in the six, they're going to get better fuel economy and less emissions by utilizing the turbocharger because they're going to get better horsepower and torque, but they're going to combine these turbochargers with other, advanced technologies to ensure that we get the power that we want, but we're also lowering emissions and we're getting a little bit better fuel economy. And so, we know how turbo works. The exhaust gases spin up the turbine, which forces the compressor wheel to bring in more air, more dense air to drop into the intake. But here's the thing with turbochargers, and a lot of these advanced ICE technologies are the exact same way. With turbochargers, the most common reason that these are going to fail are low oil levels, clogged oil lines, or even no oil at all. We're in a very good, unique position here with all these advanced ICE technologies, us as a manufacturer, and you out there selling the parts to the customers, which is most people don't do their maintenance like they're supposed to. And with most of these advanced ICE technologies, maintenance is going to be the killer of it, which is going to make a lot of opportunities for not only diagnosis, but repair. So some things to remind your customers. Don't forget. Now, this is whether you're selling to, a DIY customer across the counter or, that, top shop in town that's buying a turbocharger. Try to find the original cause of failure. Now, if this is a technician, they're going to find that we have, clogged filters or we have no oil or we have clogged lines. That's part of their job in the diagnostic process. But this holds true for DIY customers as well. We need to ask them the questions when they're buying a turbocharger. Hey, do you know why it failed? Because typically they do not fail on their own. Something caused the turbo to fail, whether something was ingested through the air filter because the wrong air filter was used or no air filter was used, or debris in the oil caused it to cake up and basically starve the turbo of the lubrication that that it needs. So remember, when we're talking to a customer about a turbo, let's try to find out if they know the root cause. And for sure, when they replace the turbo, let's make sure we recommend an oil change and an air filter to go along with it. And don't forget, there's a lot of hard to find turbo kits out there through us now that are only a day away with the drop ship program. Please utilize that because that'll make sure your customers don't have to wait 2 and 3 and 4 days for a lesser quality turbo from somewhere else with a lesser quality warranty and not everything in it that needs to go with it. And so with that, remember, with these all new no core turbocharger kits, it makes it easier for you all and your customers. We don't have to process the cores. We don't have to worry about getting them back. We're going to have leading coverage for, it doesn't matter if this is an import shop or a domestic shop, gas or diesel. And one of the more important things is we're going to include everything the customer needs, the gaskets, seals, and hardware to do the job right the first time. There's nothing worse than ordering something as expensive and bulky and large as a turbo, getting it in, and then finding out you need to wait a day or 2 more days for some silly little paper gasket, right? We want to make sure that that's in there for your customers the minute they open the box so that they can just go ahead and complete the job. Now, along with that, not just turbos, our program is going to include all the different related components that they may need as well. So maybe they need a turbo and a map sensor or a wastegate solenoid or an intercooler or something else. We're going to have that in the lineup so that they can order everything they need all at one time. And they're going to, let me tell you, if you're not selling a lot of turbos today, you're going to be very soon. Because again, remember, At this point, about 50% of all vehicles coming off the road have a turbocharger, and we already know that the vast majority of drivers do not do their maintenance on time. So it's not going to be long before they're coming into the shop for a turbo repair. And one perfect example of that is for the 1.4 liter GM. This was one of the highest failure rate turbos on the market for a very, very long time. And you see the red arrow there pointing at that feed line. That's the oil feed line. That's what actually sends the oil to lubricate the turbo. And there was a major issue with that line from the OE. That OE line would get clogged up. It would starve the turbo of oil. And these things weren't even getting 30, 40,000 miles out of them before they would burn up. So with our kit, again, not only is it a quality turbo that's going to come to the customer, it's going to be all new, no core. It's going to come with everything needed in the box, all the seals, all the O-rings, even new studs for mounting the exhaust manifold back on, because the exhaust manifold, as you see, is a portion of the turbo. But we're also going to include that updated line, that new line that keeps the oil flowing freely to the turbo to lubricate it. So this is one of those advantages through our turbocharger program that your customers have, which is they're going to get everything they need, but in some cases like this one, they're going to get everything they need plus the fix for what caused the failure in the first place. And again, all the related components that go along with it. If they need coolant lines, drain tubes, map sensors, they need actuators, speed sensors, or charge air coolers, or just gasket sets, we have them covered when it comes to the turbocharger program. And not only do we have them covered and have everything that they need, but we know they're going to work and we know they're going to perform the way the customer expects. Right. So I'm here in Irving, Texas at our training facility, but in the back of our training facility, we actually have a vehicle test center. And so what we do out there, not just turbos, all the different categories, but turbos for sure have been a big one lately. Not only do we bench test these and we, do the hot gas stand testing and all that, we actually have, before these turbos ever go on a box and make their way to your shelf to be sold, they actually come to us first and we install these on real vehicles, not brand new vehicles, real vehicles with mileage, with those typical issues that a 50, 60,000 mile vehicle would have. And we test these turbochargers for hundreds, in some cases, thousands of miles before we can put a stamp of validation on it to go in the box and go to your store. So you can have a lot of confidence in these turbocharger kits when they go out to your customers. All right, so going along with that, moving past turbochargers, I said we also are going to be using electric vapor canister purge pumps. Well, why would we do that? Well, goes back to turbochargers, because with the turbocharged and those smaller displacement engines, we're not going to be able to get as much vacuum, and we have to purge the fuel vapor canister that's going to be sitting near the gas tank. And I'm sure you sold some of those. Fuel vapor canisters are a pretty big category now as well. But when those vapors fill up and that canister is full, we have to purge those out, and we need pressure, we need vacuum to get that purge to be completed. And if we have a turbocharged vehicle, oftentimes we don't have enough. And so we'll throw an electric vapor canister purge pump in there, and that's going to basically do it for them, right? We don't have to worry about the vacuum at that point. When the time comes and the PCM commands it, it's going to get rid of those vapors. But keep in mind, one of the reasons that these fail, same thing with the canister itself, topping off the fuel. It's going to cause way too many. It's going to cause gas to get into the canister and not vapors. The vapors meant to catch the canister is meant to catch vapors, not gasoline. Topping off can get the gasoline into the canister, and now we're going to have to replace that as well. So just something to keep in mind when you're pumping gas yourself. Once it clicks, just move on. Go ahead and I trust me, I'm the same way. I want to get it to that 0, 0 at the end. At the same time, though, I don't want to damage a $800 to $1,200 component on the vehicle. So let's just move on from it. And the nice thing about these electric vapor canister purge pumps for the technician is that they can be manually controlled or bi-directionally controlled with a scan tool. So before the technician has to tear everything off, they can actually verify that it's got its functionality correct before they go and tear everything apart. And they can kind of diagnose it a little bit more easily because it is electric and it is PID related. It goes straight to the scan tool and they can bi-directionally control it. And just to give you an idea of how many opportunities there are just on these pumps, this one part number you see alone, the CP122, It's going to cover 2.8 million GM vehicles in operation on the road right now. So there's 2.8 million opportunities to sell the CP122. So there's another advanced ICE technology that we see being added. And again, that goes in part and parcel with the turbochargers. We kind of have to have them because we're doing turbochargers. But now let's talk about variable valve timing. All right, so variable valve timing is a topic we have spent a lot of time on. If you go to our YouTube channel, I can tell you we probably have, I would say, at least 15 to 20 videos around VVT at this point. But remember, I went back to 2005 there, and that's when we saw that VVT system on the 5.4 liter. That was one of the first real big VVT systems people really had to deal with, and it's just evolved ever since. But the VVT, again, you see it here, it adjusts the timing in real time as the driver's input, whether it's braking or it's accelerating. It can determine those things. The PCM is reading all that, and it can kind of change the timing as we're going down the road throughout the RPM range and reduce some of those harmful, NOx emissions, those harmful emissions that come out, right? And again, it's going to primarily use oil. Now, there are variations of VVT, but the most common form of VVT right now is going to be oil-based. It's oil-driven. It's a pressurized system. So it's using the same oil in the engine to activate the actual, solenoid itself to activate the phaser. Again, why does it fail? Same reason turbochargers fail. Oil issues for the most part. Low oil levels, the wrong oil, or extended intervals. And of course, poor OE designs. We've corrected many OE designs when it comes to VVT. And that's why customers love our VVT program. But one of the big things here I want to point out is the incorrect oil. Incorrect oil is so important. We've seen that with GM this year. They've actually changed some of the oil parameters on some of their more popular engines because of the VVT system. And so if it says 520, you need to put 520 in there. If it says 016, you need to put 016 in there because these VVT systems are designed around a certain weight oil to be actuated and controlled by the pressure of that oil. And the pressure of the oil is going to be different based on the viscosity. So make sure we're using the correct oil at all times, the right weight and specifications, and at the correct intervals. I understand there's some manufacturers that say you can go 7, 8, 9, 10,000 miles. Do what you want to do. But with VVT and turbochargers, my suggestion is no more than 5,000 miles before you get the oil change done. It says correct intervals there, but if it says over 5,000 in the book, I'd still go at 5,000. And with our variable valve timing program, again, your customers are covered. They already trust our program. We came out multiple times with fixes for common issues, and the technicians saw them, they used them, and they loved them, and it worked out beautifully. And that's why we have evolved this program to be the industry's most complete. And that's not just a saying, that's a fact. We are the most complete VVT program out there, which means you are the most complete VVT program out there with over 359 SKUs on the solenoids and kits and over 270 SKUs on the sprockets themselves. But don't forget, when we say program, the most common components are the solenoids and the sprockets, but there's other pieces that go in there, right? To call it a program, you have to have those pieces, and we have them. The oil control valves, position sensor magnets, spool filters, the VVT chain tensioners, even, going into another category, camshaft position sensors, which go hand in hand with VVT. So again, remember, oil is going to be your biggest, killer of VVT, but when it happens, everything that customer could possibly need is there. And just like all the testing and validation we do on turbochargers, we do the same thing with VVT. The only difference is in some cases, we have made some major changes to fix an OE problem with VVT. The perfect example here is on some of the solenoids. Now, if we go backwards and we go to a value line, you can buy it online real cheap and throw it in and, cross your fingers and hope it works. This is what you're going to get when you order that. It's going to have an internal shaft, which was not the original way it was supposed to be done, which means it's not going to hold up as well. It's going to prematurely wear, and it can break or crack. It's going to basically do all three of those things. The oil screen, right? is got plastic on it. So the screen, remember I said you got to use the right viscosity. The oil's got to be able to pressurize and go through the solenoid. Well, this is where the oil goes through to command that actuator, right? So those screens have to be free and clear. Any dirty oil clogging those up, it's going to hurt the VVT system. But at the same time, plastic being around those screens is going to deteriorate over time, especially with heat cycles and vibration. And then that's going to cause separating and clogging of the oil as well. And then at the bottom of there, of the actual solenoid, there's a small ring that's pressed onto the solenoid to hold the actual internal spring in place, the thing that really needs to do its job. And those rings can come loose after a couple thousand heat cycles, and they'll pop out, and now you no longer have a viable VVT solenoid. Well, if we go to the OE, the original, now that's the value line, and they obviously cut some cost even versus the OE. But with the OE, they did a couple things a little bit better, but not really. They at least used an aluminum shaft here, but that can also deform over time. It's one of the softest metals out there, right? They also still used an oil screen on that, or a plastic to house that oil screen, which is still going to be able to deteriorate, separate, and clog the oil. And they did the same thing. The spring support is still a small ring pressed onto the solenoid, which again can come out of place. And there you go. Now we don't have the spring actuation to get the phaser to do its job. So what did we do? Well, we fixed it, right? And this is something that most technicians have either tried before or heard about, and they love this. And so what we did is instead of plastic and aluminum, we did a stronger stainless steel internal shaft. That way you have consistent performance and durability. It's not going to break down like plastic and aluminum. And instead of using plastic, we welded the steel oil screen on so that we know we're going to have better lubrication and durability. It's not going to deteriorate and fall apart and clog up the system. So we know that that solenoid is going to work for a very long time. And then we also took that cap out of the bottom. We did a one piece, basically an overmold. It encloses the actual body of the solenoid itself. No longer has that big opening at the end where you have to press something in to keep the spring in. It's overmolded so that the spring can never come loose from there. So we've avoided all the issues and fixed all the known OE issues. We now have a shaft that's going to work properly. We have an oil screen that's not going to clog, hopefully, as long as they do their oil changes. And we have a spring support that's going to stay in place so that it can do its job. So again, just like turbochargers, you can have a lot of confidence when you go out and talk about our VVT program, not only because we validate it and test it, but we have everything again that the customer might need. Now, the same thing holds true on GDI and multi-port fuel injection systems. So here's the thing. You're going to find vehicles with MFI, you're going to find vehicles with GDI, and you're now going to find vehicles with both. You can have vehicles up, if it's a V8, up to 16 injectors, 8 of each, right? And they work well in a couple different conditions, right? They have a couple different drawbacks, like GDI, for example, is known for carbon building up on the tip, and that can kill the injector. It messes with the spray pattern. It basically messes with the overall combustion event of that cylinder. But it's great at lower speeds and gives you a little bit more performance and efficiency. Whereas the multi-port injectors are great at startup and higher speeds. But the nice thing about the multi-port fuel injection is it also sprays on top of the GDI fuel injector. So if we're using both in the same system, not only are we getting that performance and efficiency from GDI at those lower speeds, right? But as we accelerate and as we start up, our multi-port fuel injection is essentially going to be spraying in the same cylinder, and it's going to clean those GDI injectors at the same time. So there's a good reason that they're doing all this. Again, we need to add turbos, we need to add VVT, we need to add GDI systems now and multi-port fuel injections to get that power, but also the economy and reduced emissions. And really, why it fails is no different than any other fuel injector. Electrical failures, contaminated fuel, and worn seals causing that leaking injector. So in some cases, we have up to 16 opportunities to sell a fuel injector. And again, our system is a true program that has everything needed. And so it just depends. What I will say, and this is a big point here to make, remember on some Toyota GDI injectors, they have different reference numbers and QR codes on them. And that's because some of them have different fuel flow rates, right? So we need to make sure if a customer is calling on some of these different Toyota systems that we ask which injector they need. The ECAT should call out the variations for you and, make it a little bit easier. But again, on the GDI program, we have everything the customer may need, whether it's the high pressure fuel pump, the fuel pump kit that may have the lines with it and some other gaskets, the feed lines by themselves, fuel pressure sensors, O-rings, gaskets, the list goes on and on. When it comes to GDI, we don't just have the injectors for your customer, we have the entire GDI system. So if they have a complete failure, they get some kind of debris that takes out the system, and they need everything you see on the screen there, guess what? We have everything you see on the screen, which means you can now offer that to your customers and have everything that you see on the screen there. And again, there is no comparison to GDI and multi-port fuel injection coverage. When it comes to taking care of the customer, we've got them covered with over 762 multi-port fuel injections part numbers and 193 GDI coverage part numbers, right? And one thing I want to call out here is these are all brand new injectors, whether it's MFI or GDI. There's nothing remanufactured, reused, or repurposed on these injectors. These are brand new, and they are going to perform like brand new with the correct spray pattern and the correct flow rates. And so there's some fuel-related advanced ice technology, the ideas that are coming out. But what about cylinder deactivation solenoids? This is a newer one, hasn't been around very long, but it is now becoming more popular. And it really, all it does is it improves the fuel economy on the larger displacement engines like your V8s by deactivating some of the cylinders at cruising speeds. If you've ever heard of a Jake brake on a big rig, you hear a big rig coming down a hill or coming down a road and you hear that loud, thunderous noise coming from it. Well, what they're doing is they're deactivating cylinders in order to help use the exhaust as a brake on their vehicle. Well, this is similar. Luckily, we don't get that noise. But what it's doing is at lower speeds when you're cruising, basically the PCM just deactivates some of the cylinders, right? So it's going to shut certain things off so that we get better fuel economy. So essentially, we're going to go from, basically running a V8 to a V6 for a certain period of time until we need V8 power again, and it's going to cut those cylinders back on. And so cylinder deactivation solenoids are becoming more and more popular to give you that power. If we're cruising around at 30 miles an hour down the road, all around town all day, probably don't need all 8 cylinders. And so this is where these come into play. And again, why it fails, plastic around the housing can break down for sure. But again, oil sludge can clog the passages. I think we're seeing a theme here. Oil change maintenance is very important when it comes to all these different advanced ice technologies. And again, there's multiple variations of this, right? So we've got, coverage for Chrysler, Jeep, Ram, Chevrolet, and GMC vehicles, different variations, but just know that we have them available for your customers, and they're going to be looking for them because this is, again, it's a maintenance related item, meaning when maintenance isn't done, we're going to be replacing these items. Now, move on from that, we'll go to electric vacuum pumps. Now, this is very similar to that of the purge pump that I showed earlier, to the electric purge pump, right? Again, a lot of these smaller displacement engines do not create enough vacuum for the braking performance, right? And so by using an electric motor, we create vacuum, that pressure for things like brake boosters, as well as turbo actuators and crankcase ventilations. And the thing is, these vacuum pumps are not just found on internal combustion engines, they're also found on electric vehicles as well. But here we go. Common theme again. What causes them to fail? Oil or moisture contamination, overheating, constant use from a system leak, or an electric motor failure. But that first one there is oil or more moisture contamination. We don't want oil getting in here. So again, if we have an issue with the oiling system or the maintenance on the vehicle, there's a good chance we're going to see it going somewhere we don't want it to, and this is something that can be affected by that. And this is not the most high-end category yet. There's only a handful of manufacturers out there that are adopting this for now, but it's going to increase. But just so you know, those who have adopted it, we've got 12 different part numbers now to service those customers or those manufacturers who have adopted this technology. Again, Chrysler, Jeep, Ram, GM, Volvo, and Ford there, just to name a few, we do have those covered. And then we'll get into active grill shutters. So yet another advanced ice technology that it's been around for quite a few years now, but it's basically the norm now. Pretty much every vehicle is going to have this. And all it does is improve that fuel economy by reducing drag and allowing air to flow over the vehicle. Think NASCAR here. If you've ever watched a race at Talladega or Daytona, you know when they qualify, they don't care about the engine getting hot because it's only 2 laps. So they just slap tape all over the front grille of that car, and it causes all that air to go across, and we get a little bit better aerodynamics. But you can't do that forever, or you're going to blow the engine because there's no cooling going across the radiator. And so, what the active grill shutter does is it opens and it closes to optimize not only the engine temperature, but the fuel economy as well. And of course, why it fails here, very, very common: debris, snow, ice, any type of accident, any front end collision, you're going to, basically be required to replace the active grill shutter. And again, it works very simply. When it opens, it allows that air to cross the radiator to cool down the coolant. Same thing with the condenser for the AC. And when it's closed, it closes that gap quite a bit so that more air crosses over the vehicle, improving efficiency. So again, remember, we're using VVT to change, the timing. We're using turbochargers to get more power. We're using active grill shutters here to get more efficiency with the airflow over the car. And then in some cases, we may even have GDI and multi-port fuel injection on all these same cars, getting better fuel economy and power out of the fueling system in that combustion event. So don't forget active grill shutters. This is another advanced ice technology that is taking off, and we are there for the customers and ready for them. And the same thing holds true, and this is my last little bit, is electrical AC compressors. These are really cool, actually. And again, you can find these on ICE engines and EVs. But what it does is it improves the performance and the fuel economy of the vehicle by eliminating the strain on the engine because of a belt. So we're taking the belt out of the equation. We no longer need the engine to turn to activate the AC compressor. The AC compressor can work on its own. It's got an internal electric motor, and it can be commanded all by itself. Now, on the electric motor side, you can have the electric drive motor fail over time, and you could still have leaks or seizing due to oil starvation on the electric, AC compressor. But the reality is we've reduced a variable, which is the belt and the performance of the engine having an impact on the AC compressor itself, right? And the cool thing is these are on EVs and ICE engines. And what's even cooler about it, if you ever walked by a Tesla in a parking lot and it's 95 degrees outside and it's been sitting there for 2 hours, you might hear it for a second go, is this car running? Well, no, the compressor's not running. The car's not running, but the compressor is. What's really cool about these and a lot of vehicles that utilize them, the vehicle can determine that the hybrid battery or the electric battery or the coolant has gotten too hot to service those batteries. It will kick these motors on, these AC compressors on, to cool down the batteries while you're at work, just sitting in your office and knowing that the car's out there burning up in the sun. So with the electrical AC compressors, the vehicle can do even more to protect itself when you're not even there. So this is again one of those categories where we're going to see a lot of adoption from manufacturers. And one of the things that we got to make a point out of here is when you do sell one of these, or you get a call about one of these, make sure you look up the correct oil that goes to it. It has to be a non-conductive AC oil. You do have it, I promise you. And well, if it's one of ours, it's going to tell you exactly what needs to go in there. But you need to make sure you're selling the correct oil for this, so that way we don't have a high voltage short to ground that's going to end up disabling the vehicle. So all in all, that's a lot of different categories, right? But again, most vehicles now are adopting all, if at least the majority of them, but in some cases all of them, to get this fuel economy, this performance, and this reduced emissions. So keep all of these in mind, and remember, throughout all of the different categories we just talked about, you have your customers covered, you have quality, and we're ready to take care of those technicians and those DIY customers with any of these advanced ICE technologies. And with that, Aaron, I want to pass it off to you so you can show these folks some of the things we've done or you've done to get them some support out in the field when they're talking about all these different categories. Go ahead, Aaron.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you very much, Corey. And that was great. Corey really went over 8 different newer technologies that have been adopted to help make vehicles more efficient, certainly make them more consumer friendly as it's increasing fuel mileage. And these are all categories that are going to continue to grow in the next 10 years for sure. What we've done from the marketing side is create several different pieces, different printed materials that you can use after this call to take some of these messages to the street. On some of the more established traditional categories, we have product flyers that we package as what's in your box, our major marketing initiative. So we have these around popular categories that you're probably already selling. Some of the newer technologies, we've dropped into a newer template called Advanced Technology Solutions. So we have these flyers for cylinder deactivation solenoids, as well as active grille shutters. And then some of even the larger, more popular categories will do full line program brochures. So we have these available in categories like VVT. So we certainly want you to feel prepared and able to take this message out to your service provider customers today and every day. And then in addition to printed pieces, we also believe very, very strongly in supporting you with video and other digital assets. So we have the Standard Brand YouTube channel that has almost 730 separate technical and installation videos. We built the channel up now to over 76,000 followers, most of which already are professional technicians. And we have specific playlists already on there for advanced ICE categories like EVAP, VVT, turbocharging. So folks can go on there and learn more about categories just by watching several 3-minute videos. And to offer additional technical support, we've created these very robust digital product portfolios around these categories. These are available on the Standard Brand website simply by going to the digital resources section and searching the topic that you'd like to learn more about. And you'll be delivered one of these, 20 to 30 page digital product portfolios. So, as you can see, we've got try to have you covered as best we can to support these growing categories. Really, so what you're able to go to the street with our program, when you're talking about our products, when you're selling and representing the standard box, it's a commitment to developing components for the next generation of vehicles. And I think we've learned in recent years that the next generation isn't necessarily going to be electric. But what the next generation will probably have is an ICE engine with an awful lot of electric add-ons to make that ICE engine more and more efficient. So even though most vehicles today are still having internal combustion engines, you'll see that more and more of them will have electric canister purge pumps, electric vacuum pumps, electrical AC compressors. So vehicles are getting more and more electric, whether we realize it or not. With us, you also get in-house design and manufacturing. That's something that's has become unique with our company, but we do have 21 of our own manufacturing facilities in the U.S., Mexico, and around the world. Our products are also extensively tested in the lab, end-of-line tested before they're put in the box. New applications, as Corey talked about with turbochargers, are extensively tested on vehicles at our testing center in Texas. And then in addition to the actual parts, we round it out for you with complete programs. And that's what makes things like the turbocharger offering, the VVT offering, the fuel injection program so unique, as we're able to go to the street with the most complete programs in the industry, as well as detailed sales support and training programs for you and your technicians to make sure everyone is best prepared to be able to diagnose issues on these vehicles and correctly repair them. So yeah, Corey, I think you did an awesome job. And with that, we'll turn it over and see if there's any questions.
Yeah, I just took a look here, Aaron, and thank you for wrapping us up there. I think the marketing material alone is a great piece to go out and just put it in the hands of the technicians, show them exactly just how capable we are and how easily we can service the needs of the shop. So thank you for wrapping us up with that. And I don't see any pressing questions here, so I'm just going to say thank you to everyone again for being here. Hope to see you next month when we talk primarily about ignition coils. And hope you have a great rest of your day and have an opportunity to have a conversation about one of these advanced ice technologies with a technician or a customer at some point in the very near future today. And now you'll know exactly what to recommend when the sale comes. So thank you again for being here. We'll see you next month. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you again.